all the major features. It's free and open source. So if you're wondering to yourself, first off, how can I try this thing? Is this man trying to sell me something? No, it's actually a free and open source terminal that y'all can use for anything that you're trying to do. So anything that we show off today is something that you could install on your computer tonight and also contribute to if there's anything in the rough edges that you want to improve on. So I'll go ahead and just jump into the basics. This is the normal run through that I like to do with people, just to show them the major features and also give us a grounding to try out some coding tasks and other stuff like that. So this is the Warp terminal that I'm showing you right now. And this is also the example repository that I'll go ahead and use to work with coding agents, among other things. And if anyone wants to follow along here or afterwards, this is also free and open source for you to go grab. It's an example project that is written in Rust, I'll admit, so it's not Python themed. I apologize I didn't ask Fable to port this to Python. I thought about it last night. I thought about it. I didn't end up going through with the tokens on that. If someone wants to port this tutorial to Python, I'm sure you could do it in a reasonable amount of time. I'd love to see it if you want to share it out. But this is a Rust, which is also the language that we use for the Warp terminal. It's kind of why we chose it. But this is just an example repository that I'll use to ask agents to implement features for us. It's really the purpose of it. And it's an issue tracker. So it's just a menu inside of your terminal to go through GitHub issues on a repository that you specify. And it has a few purposefully broken features that we'll ask agents to fix. And I do believe there's also a solutions branch. A couple people have asked in the past, like, can I just use this tool in general? You can if you go to the solution branch and clone it down. Otherwise, use this as a test bed to start working with some of these Warp features. And I'll hop back over to the terminal to show you what it is. So this is the Warp terminal. You can see it's a little bit different, perhaps, than other terminals that you've used before. So first off, we got a sidebar here where all of our terminal tasks are running. If you've used tools like, I don't know, CMux is a very popular one. Maybe you've also used, just the Codex app or Claude Desktop where you have your chats off to the side. All of those mirror what you're seeing here. And you can also change it too. So you can change Warp from like a standard terminal where you set up your custom TMUX setup all the way to using something that's highly managed and maybe more agent focused, which is this vertical tab bar that you're seeing here. Question earlier, yes, you can expand and hide it if you want to focus on whatever task that you're doing. Got a keyboard shortcut too. And every task that you run is going to be its own little shell. So I'm hitting Command-T and I'm just creating new shells inside of here. And you'll notice off the bat, there's some niceties that we give you out of the box that perhaps you don't know about from other terminals. So normally in a terminal, you need to set it up. You need to like download a Z shell or Fish or some other custom shell to give it a prompt, display your current directory, display your current Git branch, all that sort of stuff. The original reason that we made Warp is we just wanted it to be easier to hop into the terminal without setting anything up. So this here, where it's showing you like the current directory that you're in, or the current branch that you have, or the changes. This is something I'll talk about later. It's the code review panel. All this stuff is just built in. So you don't need a custom prompt. In fact, on my machine, I don't have a custom prompt at all. I'll side by side this with like the built-in macOS terminal and what we're seeing here. You notice I have like no prompt set up. This is just plain old bash. And then in Warp, it just kind of warpifies it, as we like to call it. It just gives you like a directory switcher where you can actually navigate around to. So this is going to give you some inline commands to jump into nested folders, for example. It also has auto-completion. So based on the previous command, it'll decide what the next one's probably going to be based on your history and also based on like a local LLM that we package up with this thing. So that when it runs the next command, it's actually a little bit smarter. It knows what it can do. For example, here, when I ran list, it found that app.rust was inside of here and suggested that as a potential next command. This is a little bit contrived. We're just kind of walking through autocomplete. But you get the idea. If you ever use like tab completions and cursor, it's kind of like that for terminal commands. It's convenient a surprising amount of the time. Sometimes I don't even open an agent, and I just run through a bunch of shell commands with next step prediction, which is kind of cool. I'm going to jump back to the previous folder here. And also just to side by side, the same experience in like my standard terminal. You'll notice I have nothing set up. So no next command, everything runs inside of a single line. And another aspect is you'll notice I have to highlight in order to grab the output of a previous command or something like that. This is another aspect of warp that we can talk about, which is blocks. So every command that you run inside of this guy is going to be run inside of a block. So if you like click on an input and output pair, you'll notice that unlike the other terminal where I'm just like clicking and nothing happens, in here you can just lazily click and it will immediately highlight the input, output, and just whatever metadata is in here. You'll notice it also tells me like the amount of time to completion, the git status, and also the current directory. And if you want to do something with the output of that command, you have a right-click menu with a bunch of options. So if you wanted to, for example, like copy just the command or just the output, you got keyboard shortcuts and options to do that. So let me do something that's a little bit less contrived. How about if I wanted to, for example, tail the logs yes, that's going to be inside of my warp dev instance, actually. Let me hop over to that one. Here we are. Don't worry about this behind the curtain. This is a different build of warp where I just have a command saved. And I'll talk about saved commands too, because that's pretty cool. But this is, I'm just going to run a stack trace here, looking at the output of a warp command. And this is what you get when you're like tailing the logs of something. So this is looking at the debug logs for the currently running warp app in this window. So you notice as I like type things and go back, it's capturing all of that into this log. And the reason I'm doing that is to just give you an example of if you're running a long-running command, as we call them, you get some niceties to make it easier to navigate. So for example, you get a sticky header, kind of nice. So I can jump to the top by just clicking on that sticky header, and this is the full log pair. You also have this button at the bottom to jump down to the end of the stack trace. You also have command up arrow and down arrow to quickly jump up and down through the block. It's very convenient. And if you want to filter this down, there's also an option for that too. So if you are doing a more back-end workflow and you just need to look at the specific outputs as they stream in for, let's say we're looking at the dispatching global action event, and we just want to look at when those logs fire to better understand it or to debug a problem. You could hit filter at the top here, and what this will do is it will go ahead and filter the lines to just the ones that contain that string. So now this is a live output with filtering applied. If I'm looking at the outputs from a backend server, for example, and I just want to see when those events occur, now I can just filter it down instead of having to scroll through the whole stack trace. So remember here, it was a massive log. I could try to find an app, and yes, we do also have like a find menu. Now I'm actually looking at both of them. Oh boy. So if I look for it, yeah, I could thumb through and look at all the instances, but it's more convenient to just filter it down. So if I do that, now I can just laser-eyed look at everything that's going on. And if I sort of jump around the other app, you'll notice that it live updates as I go through it. Even if I kill the command, the filter still applies. So this is especially useful if you wanted to just filter down specific events, and then you wanted to ask an agent about why those events are occurring. And that kind of jumps me over to like talking about agents too. There's a built-in agent inside of Warp. If you've used tools like OpenCode or Pi or things like that, where you bring your own key or you use built-in inference to talk to an agent, we have an equivalent for that with some nice UX on top. So if I wanted to ask about dispatching global actions and just drone a little bit further, I could actually click on this block here. And you'll notice at the bottom, I have this whole shortcut to ask an agent about that block right away. So if I did my filter, I kill the logs, I see where the events are occurring. Now I could ask an agent and say, why is dispatching global action occurring in this code base? And I could say check project/warp because that's where the project's living right now. And it's free to navigate around the machine too. Ah, right. Yes, I was running into an authentication issue in my dev build. Well, anyways, this should be easy to copy paste too. No problem. So if I wanted to copy the output and put it into my other terminal instance where everything's working, I could just copy paste right over there. Look at that. How easy was that? And now I could go ahead and ask the agent about this and say, why is, oh, that's the wrong thing I wanted to paste. This guy, why is dispatch global hashing occurring in this code base. And I can actually switch to voice mode. What am I doing? You can hold the function key in this terminal and you get free voice inference, or free transcription, I should say. Check on the project/warp directory and diagnose where we run this log. So there we go. And you'll notice that it does a pretty good job of getting the syntax. It got project instead of projects, but we can go ahead and fix that and send it off. And now we're going to ask an agent about this. There we go. Everything is going according to plan. So easy to copy outputs, easy to jump into an agent conversation without having to like open the CLI and then deal with their input box, all that stuff. You just kind of hop between terminal, agent, terminal, agent. That's kind of the flow that we're after here. It's convenience. Yeah, totally, man, totally. And I also forgot to ask, for anyone who's in the chat, what kind of work do you do? Are you more back-end focused, data science focused, front-end focused? Just getting a sense of like what's useful to show to y'all. Like, is this interesting? Do you deal with back-end server logs day to day, or do you deal with something else? I'm curious. But yeah, now we can see the answer that was fed back from the agent. So if we're looking here, I'll inspect the warp code base. It jumped over to project/warp. A nicety here is you can make the agent very permissive and jump around different directories on your machine. You're not locked into your current directory. So even though I wasn't inside of project/warp, it still read it and understood what was going on. And it gave us a nice little code snippet too. So if we wanted more context on where this runs, it's like, oh, okay. So it's running inside of core/app, where we handle this. The specific noisy action in your logs register here. The main context log is app window lifecycle callbacks. Okay, useful. So if I wanted to jump into that, it's not a bug. That makes sense. These are legacy global actions fired at normal act, focus, and window events. So now I know why that event occurs. Useful. And if I wanted to jump in for a bit more context, we also have a file viewer inside of Warp. This is really cool. So if I click on this and I wanted to open this file inside of Warp, there we go. It's opened straight to where that's occurring. Or actually, I think I got the line number wrong. Oh, man. Well, don't worry. We also have find in app. So there it is. Oh, no, I got it right. I was just not looking a few lines below me. So there we are. This is actually where we see it inside of our code base. Nice. And if I wanted to jump around, we do have an LSP inside of here. And Python is included in that LSP too. So if you want to have like go-to definition, jump around things, you can. So here I'm enabling Rust Analyzer. Rust takes a long time to wake up. I had disabled it in an earlier build, so we're going to wait for the Rust Analyzer to catch up a little bit. If you're a Python head, this will be much faster. In fact, anything's faster than Rust Analyzer. But it's the full thing. So if you're used to traditional code editors, you'll actually be pretty at home in here. And I personally don't find the need to jump over to VS Code out of my terminal as much as I used to. Because first, you have a file viewer. And most of the time, I'm just reading to understand what agents are working on. We have a very easy way to do that. And because we have an analyzer inside of here, we should be able to go to definition. Look at this. So if I hold the command key, I can click on that, and I can also see where this function is being used if I'm curious. So if I wanted to jump over here and see where that focus event's occurring, there it is. If you go ahead and hover, you also get in-app inference. Lovely. So it's very useful. Yes, as an editor, you can edit things inside of this file viewer as well. But it's most useful for understanding what agents did. Because at this point, most of our job is reading code. Let's be real. Maybe your job is still writing code for some amount of time. By the end of this, maybe I'll convince you otherwise. But most of my job and a lot of people's jobs at this point is reading. So we want to make reading as easy as possible. By like jumping to the file from agent conversations and also language tools. So you could go to definition, hop around, understand what work an agent is doing before you stamp a PR or something like that. So that's a kind of nice end-to-end demo, I think, of you can run commands inside of Warp. You get a few nice features, and I can recap a few of those for you. You get, well, expanding and collapsing sidebar. Even though this is a complete mess, we can ignore it, which is kind of nice. Everything runs inside of blocks. Blocks are convenient because they're easy to navigate around. Here I'm just using arrow keys. They give you options to easily work with the output. So if I like just copy the output, there we go. I don't have to like drag to highlight a long stack trace or something. If you want to ask questions, it's easy to jump into an agent conversation. It's very convenient hopping between the two. So if I wanted to like ask what other files are inside here, this is very contrived. but you get the idea. We also do have auto detection down here too. So if you type a plain English question, it'll smartly switch you over to an agent instead of running a bash command. So you can like select things as context, ask a question, it hops you into an agent conversation with that stuff pulled into context, and then you can just ask about it inside of here. It's that sort of end-to-end terminal to agent and back again that we really tried to focus on with this. It's kind of unique. Once you get used to it, you really don't want to go back. But the second thing I will talk about is using CLI agents too, which we've also made very, very nice. So what all have we talked about here? Cloud Arch focused, Junior SE. Nice. Love that. Is there file formatting functionality in Warp? File formatting, I'm curious what you mean by that. So do you mean like format on save? Because I think we run the LSP on save, but we don't have format on save. For that, I would use like a traditional CLI tool for that. If you want to see it, you can definitely run /feedback inside of Warp, and that'll hop you straight over to our issue logs. So if you wanted to look into that and request a new feature, very easy to do. We just haven't run into the need strongly enough yet to implement it. Is it possible to attach Warp into VS Code? We don't have Warp embedded in VS Code because it's a Rust-based terminal. It's a completely different view on things. It's not just like a shell. So the answer is no, unfortunately. But you can use Warp alongside VS Code or even as a little replacement for VS Code. It's very controversial to say, but a lot of people have been like kind of pulling their workloads out of VS Code into Warp the more that they explore like the file editing and file viewing features. I know that's a lot to ask, especially if you've used VS Code for a long time. It personally took me, as an employee of Warp, 3 months to stop opening VS Code, even with all the things that I showed you. So I don't blame you if that's like a non-answer, but I do encourage you to at least try and see what you think about it. Yeah, Jupyter Notebook support. That makes sense, especially in the PyData crowd. I should have thought about that. Well, good point. I don't know what Jupyter Notebook support could look like, but there's no reason it's impossible. It seems possible. Again, I could go ahead and ask an agent to leave a bit of feedback on that and get the community going. So I'm just going to jump over here. You also notice here, look at this. If I type out a terminal command while I'm talking to an agent, it'll smartly put me back into shell mode. I just have muscle memory to do this at this point. Like I don't think about am I in an agent conversation or not. I just do whatever I want. So I'm going to jump over to Warp. And I think I have some stuff inside here. Yeah, whatever. This is a code review panel, by the way. I forgot to mention. Warp has a code review panel. So if you just click on this, you can open up a code review panel to see whatever is currently in your Git diff. I could also discard these edits or discard all if I don't need them, which I currently don't. You can also stash them straight away. This is a nice little convenience feature. So I'm going to go ahead and stash those. Did that actually stash? I never used the stash button. But let me go ahead and discard because I don't really need them. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and stash that, and I'm going to leave a bit of feedback. So I'm going to ask an agent to work on this. You can also run /clear. No, Command K is what I use. But anyways, whoops. Go ahead and clear that. Command K to clear whatever's going on. And I could ask it with voice mode. It would be very helpful if Warp had Jupyter Notebook support. It's almost a VS Code replacement for me, but without this feature, it is not. So we need to spec out what a basic Jupyter Notebook viewer would look like. I imagine being able to write out the notebook, have run buttons for each individual script would be the MVP for this. It's possible we could use our existing notebook editor and enable it to view as a Jupyter Notebook instead. There's a lot to spec out here and likely needs community input. How about that? I'm sure there's a lot you know about with Jupyter Notebooks that I do not, so please fill in the issue. And you also notice voice mode does a good job. Look at that. Jupyter Notebook. I got the spelling correct. This is built in. I'll say it again. If you hold the function key inside of Warp, you get this output right here. And I'll go ahead and send that off. I'll also say file a GitHub issue with needed details rather than writing the spec straight away. How about And if you send an input, it will interrupt the agent by default. That's a little bit different in Warp. You can also queue it. So if you click on this, there's a shortcut that you can use in Warp to say, my next command needs to queue instead of interrupting what the agent is doing. So I could do that. And I could say something like, post the issue link back here. Oh, it already did it. It finished too fast. Well, queuing will make sure that it doesn't interrupt the agent while it's working. And you can toggle that on and off as like a mode. Okay, so we made an issue. Let's go ahead and look at this. It looks like it didn't really follow the issue template. So I'll say, follow the issue template inside this repository and redraft it appropriately. Agents love just implementing their own issue templates, which can be a bit annoying. So let me go ahead and do that. Any possibility to keep track of token consumption? Yes, absolutely. And I'll show you how you do that. So you can do it from your billing tab, as you can imagine. Like if you set up Warp, you have a billing tab. But also, if you're bringing your own key and things like that, you can inspect it inside of Warp directly. So this is probably a time where I can talk a little bit about pricing and stuff, because that's important. It's where the rubber meets the road. So everything that I'm showing you here is just connecting to Warp servers, which give you access to whatever model you want to use. It also gives you access to our auto routers. So if you're sensitive to spend, you can choose cost efficient or my preferred option, open weights. This will connect you to, I believe, the Kimi series of models, since they support images. But you can also specifically choose GLM 5.2. If you're not familiar with these models, don't worry. These are like the state-of-the-art options in the open weight space. Open weight meaning they're open for other companies to implement on top of, and they're cheaper. They run fewer tokens for comparable performance to state-of-the-art stuff. So we do give you options all the way up to auto open weights. And this will route you to the appropriate model, depending on the complexity of your task. I personally stitch it to GPT 5.5 low for demos and also for a lot of my work because it's fast and token efficient. It's like a nice balance. If you're like sensitive to spend, but you still do want some intelligence, I use that. Open weight will actually reduce the spend even further. So all of those options are available to you. And in this case, again, connecting to Warp servers, which means you can run token inference through Warp directly. And we will give you like a slight subsidy on regular token use. It's like bring your own key minus 10% is how you can think about the mental math, or minus 5%, something like that. But if you just want to like bring your own inference directly to Warp, like I want to bring my own key, or I want to connect to Open Router or another URL that I own, if that is you, we also support that. And I can show you here. First, I'll show you that, then I'll show you credit usage, which you can see called out right here, actually. So if you go to settings, I'll show you right here, the Warp agent. By default, connect to Warp servers. You can run tokens through us. If that's a problem, we've got an API key section. We also do let you connect to your Twitter account to get the Grok models for free. That's a thing. If you happen to be paying for Twitter, you do get free agents if you want it. But you can bring your keys right here. And I don't have it enabled right now, but let me, again, go over to the development version of Warp. Warp dev, settings, agents, Warp agent. Down here, we have an option called, where is it? I've been running into this recently where custom inference is switched off for me. I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to check with the team on it. Let me open one last time. You should be able to see this. You can tell this is a live demo, by the way. I do my own stunts. None of this is fully pre-prepared. It's only half pre-prepared. Here we are. This is what I expected to see. So we have this custom inference section inside of Warp, and this will let you also add a custom model. So if you wanted to connect an endpoint like openrouter.ai/whatever, you can do that. And then run your inference through there. And you can track it through whatever that inference URL is, or you can track it in Warp directly. I can show you where you track it per conversation. So that's where it's most useful. So over here, if I go ahead and grab inside of here, we have a credit section. And this will break down the amount of credits being used. We're switching this to tokens soon, by the way. If you're like, what is a credit versus a token? We can help you with the math. We're going to change this to tokens, so it's very obvious what you are spending down to the dollar. But you can measure it this way, credits. You also see a breakdown of the models being used. So if you're using like one of our routers that routes you to different models, and you're curious, what model are you routing me to? Did you choose an expensive model or a cheap model for this task? You can find out by opening the credit panel and seeing what it is using. And it will also give you some information about tool calls, time to completion, all that stuff. So if you're trying to balance token cost with speed, with performance, we give you the metrics in order to do that. And we even give you an API. So if you wanted to programmatically review your spend, review your API usage across yourself or your team, you could do that too. Pretty useful for teams who want to make sure, like, how much is our organization spending? We just switched to this new model. Is it saving us money? Is it costing us performance? That sort of thing. We give you tools in order to evaluate that. And if you want to give feedback and work with us on how to make this more transparent, please do. We have an initiative over the next few weeks to make this more transparent, like giving you dollar amounts so that the math is easier to grok, and also giving you deeper understanding of what the agent is doing. So hopefully that answers that. Hopefully that answers that. VS Code doesn't support it out of the box, as I know. Support what? Oh, resume command. I'll also talk about that. So if Warp supports community extensions, maybe someone can add it. Well, better yet, we're fully open source if you just want to commit one of these ideas. We do have extensions in progress for like LSPs. I don't think we have an extension system for like adding custom UI to Warp. I'd be curious what that would look like, because plugin systems, you got to draw the right boundary. You got to draw the right slice and decide, like, are we going to have a plugin system for the UI? Are we going to have a plugin system for like programmatically controlling Warp? That's something that we're working on. I'm curious what the right slice would be for like an extension system. But we are working on extensions for LSP specifically. So if there's a language you want to see inside of the file editor that we don't support, it is something that you could add. Though I do believe like Jupyter Notebooks involves not only like syntax highlighting, but also inline editing experience and having a run button that integrates with the terminal. It's a deeper thing that I don't think an extension could meaningfully solve unless we invent a new system. So all that to say, it's all possible. And I would love for y'all to chime in. I've actually got if you want to chime in on this issue right here, go ahead and do so. That'd be fun. But there's just a lot to build. But it's fully open for the community to hop in and help us build it. So that's my invitation, I guess. OK, so we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about like Warp terminal features. We've also jumped straight into the Warp agent. One other thing I might ask about is how many of y'all use CLI agents? Like specifically, like you use Claude Code and you have a Claude Code subscription and you want to use Claude Code. Like how many people in this crowd are like, good job, Ben. Little pat on the head. I love your little agent, but I need to use my Claude Max subscription. How many of y'all are in that situation? Because I understand it, and I can actually show you the way that you can use Claude Code directly. Yep, yeah, expect it. So just throwing this out there as an option. Some people actually use Claude Code for intensive coding tasks and the Warp agent for stuff like this because of the convenience factor. So hopefully what I've shown you here is like, oh, that's interesting. And I might use it to ask me questions in the terminal or questions like this so that it only costs me a few dollars of inference. But for heavy coding tasks where I need subsidization, I'm going to switch to Claude Code. That's what a lot of our users do. And if that's you as well, I can show you how it works. So if you wanted to use Claude Code inside of Warp, it's a terminal. You just run Claude, as you would expect. And I'm going to jump into a project where we can like kick around some code. And of course, the Warp agent can also write code. That's implied. But let me go ahead and run Claude just to show you what this looks like. So if I'm running Claude, this is what it looks like. It's the same CLI that you're used to. But you do have some extra buttons and knobs at the bottom to make it easier to work with Claude Code inside of Warp specifically. So if we're looking at this guy right here, we can see at the bottom, oh, what's going on here? Terminal program tried to write to your clipboard. Yeah, a lot of clipboard writes. That's something Claude Code likes to do. So we do have a ribbon to make it nicer to interact with Claude. So first, we do get the same chips I was showing you earlier, like the directory, the current branch, and also some agent settings if you want to like choose everything that you want to see. So we actually have this like customizable chip corner So if you want to have a custom toolbar when you're working with agents, you can do whatever you want. So if you wanted to see your Python environment inside of here, for example, you could drag those into view. And now whenever you're working with Claude, you will still see that. Also, if you're a JavaScript person and you want to see your node environment, you can drag that in as well. And now it'll be visible whenever you're working with Claude. In fact, I could demo that right here. So this is a JavaScript project. You'll notice that you get the current node version and a way to switch around, which is kind of cool. And if I jump into Claude, we should still see that. Yes. So now we have our node version right there at the bottom. Cool. So that's that. We give you a nice toolbar just so you don't have to switch around and see everything or customize your Claude. It's just right here. But we also give you some editor-like features. So the voice input, still here. So if you want to talk to Claude with a highly accurate voice input using whisper flow, you can do that here. I personally prefer it to something like Claude's built-in voice mode, which is like 80% as accurate. It's inaccurate enough that I just don't love using Claude's voice mode. So I recommend this one, just because it runs through whisper flow. It's totally free, and it tends to be more accurate when it puts things out. So I'm actually going to ask it to work on some coding tasks inside of here. I'm going to pull up the app so we can see what it looks like, and then we'll ask Claude to do something with it. So another thing, there are split panels inside of Warp. So if I hit Command D, you can get a new split panel right off here. And if I wanted to run this app, it's cargo run -- we'll do warp.dev/warp. So this is going to be a GitHub issue viewer, and we're going to point it at the Warp repository in order to look at it. And you can see off to the side, you see the currently focused panel. So when you're working with Claude Code, you get an indicator that you're working with Claude Code. And you also see the status of Claude Code. So right now it's running and it's waiting for my input. We get this little in progress indicator. Another thing that you can do if you're multi-threading yourself is you can click on this button up here and show all the panes sort of splayed out. So this is kind of cool. You can now see all the panels that are inside of this tab. So if you're running multiple Claude codes side by side in a window, you can see all the Claude codes running in a command center. Makes it easy to see which agents are done and which ones need your attention. That's why we added this expanded, exploded view. So inside of here, we have a running terminal task and Claude code. And off to the side, we can see this viewer for all the issues inside of here. Oh no, this version of the app is actually fixed. Let me, I swear I double checked that. So let me go ahead and revert this back to an earlier state. Fix issue, yeah, there we go. So let me go ahead and remove some of these. I'm actually going to roll it back. So I'm going to say git rebase I of that. How do you do it again? Oh, it's -I. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. So I'm just going to drop a few commits so that we have a few things broken. And then we'll ask Claude to look at it for us. So if we do git log one line again, very helpful. Nice. And then we'll go ahead and do that. You can see the autocomplete's pretty freaking good. And then we'll go ahead and run this app again and see what it looks like. Yeah, there we go. So these were a few of the bugs that I wanted Claude to work on. So you notice some text contrast issues where it's assuming dark mode, and also it kind of jumps off the face of the planet as we arrow through here. It doesn't adjust the scroll position. So let's ask Claude to work on this for us. And I'll use Opus just to make sure it finishes a little bit faster. So I'll hold down the voice key. I want to fix two issues inside of here. The first one is the text contrast, where it's assuming a dark text, but it should be using the system theme, maybe dimmed for contrast. And also, as I use my arrow keys to navigate, it doesn't update the scroll position in the left sidebar. There we go. And it also does format things down to the markdown. So that's kind of cool. So this is a bulleted list so that it knows about the structured information. And then we can just send that off. And while that cooks, I can show you a few other things. So first off, if you want to expand Claude while it's working, even if you have multiple tabs, there's this little option inside of Warp. Most people don't know about it. Is this maximize pane option. And it's Command-Shift-Enter if you're a keyboard person. So if you click maximize pane, this will expand that split pane to take up the full screen. So if you want to focus on what Claude's doing for a moment, you can expand it like that. Then hit Command-Shift-Enter to go back. This is really nice if you're a split pane person, but sometimes you need to look into the window without having to like grab a drag handle and kind of do that. It's much easier to just say, oh, let me look at what it's doing. Sounds good. Go back. So that's a little convenience feature for you. And while that is running, I could probably run a second agent just to give you an idea of that. So a few things that Warp does help you with as well are work trees and status notifications. I'll show you both. So I've already set up a work tree inside of here for this project. I will go ahead and create one. I'm going to name this one SQLite caching. And when we jump over to it, this is I showed you a lot right there. But I basically set up a hotkey inside of my terminal to run a series of commands to do whatever I want to do. In this case, I set up a hotkey, or we call it a tab config, that programmatically opens a new tab inside of Warp, creates a new work tree to start working with the agent, and then jumps me straight into a Claude session so I can start working on stuff. And let me show you what that looks like. I'm doing this on purpose, by the way, so that we have multiple agents running at once. I'm lining up my burners right now. I'm lining up my demos. So let me show you what this thing is. This is the programmatic tab config that I created. You also get in-app notifications. There it is. So you can jump back to the conversation whenever it's done, or you can just dismiss it and review it from this little inbox right here. So it's like, oh, what agents do I have running? I have this one. I can go check on it. You also have an unread tab just to click on that. But this is the tab config that just created this new work tree that we're in. And it's fully customizable. You can do whatever you want. So I set up this custom tab config that says, I want to open a new tab, and I want to run a few commands to set me up. So I want to make a new directory inside of this work trees folder, and I can set it to whatever I want my work trees folder to be. I want to add a new work tree, and I want to have a little prompt to ask me what the work tree name is. And then I want to put it inside of this directory. I want to jump into that directory. I also want to do some pre-flight checks, like I want to fetch all the dependencies. And then I want to open Claude because that's my coding agent. You can do whatever you want here. You can be very, very creative. Maybe you just want to do, I want to create a work tree and then decide what to do. You can delete some commands and do that. If you just want to start up Claude right away, you can do that. You also set your directory, your terminal window, and then whatever panes that you want to open. So if you want to get really creative and program Warp to like open 3 split panes, start the server over here, start a Claude instance over here, and start a client app instance in the center, you could customize it fully to do that sort of thing. Just one click, and then your terminal is set up to do whatever you're trying to do. In my case, I prefer to create a work tree, start up Claude inside of that work tree, and then get going. So that's what I've done here. And this is also the way that I got that prompt earlier where it like asked me what's the name of the work tree. It's this params idea right here. So you can say params, work tree name, and go for it. And if you also want to update that tab config, there's a skill built into the terminal, so you can just ask an agent to do stuff with it. So if I hit update tab config, oh, that's not working how I expected. Interesting. Again, proof that this is a live demo. It looks like that's not working how I expect. I should probably file a bug for that. But there is a skill built into Warp, so I could manually do this if I want to. I could say /update tab config, like that. And if I wanted to ask an agent to update something about this, I totally could. So we can see right there it's inside of tab configs, copy file path, how about that? And I'll just say update this tab config to open codecs instead. And it has a full understanding of like how our tab config system works. So now I'm using the Warp agent to do this. You could also ask Claude Code to update your tab configs, but for the sake of a demo, I just wanted to show you there's a built-in skill. You can ask an agent to sort of rice your setup and make it as interesting as you want to make it. So that's a thing that you can reach for. That makes it very easy to like open a work tree and just get going on stuff. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. If that was a little confusing, also tell me, slow down. I'm happy to sort of back up and explain things as well. OK, let's go jump back into this agent session, right? So we see right here we get a little check mark whenever an agent's done. We can click into it to see what it did. And yeah, it implemented this change. It did implement a lot of comments, though, which I don't love. So again, Command-Shift-Enter to look at everything that the agent's doing here. And there's this diff that I don't feel super great about. Oh, that finished as well. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the code review panel and give some feedback to the agent. So I can hit View Changes, that panel from earlier, to see everything that the agent did here. And we get an idea of everything. So this is Also something that you can expand. I can hit maximize. You get a file explorer off to the right. There's only one file that's edited, so we're just seeing that here. But you can scroll through, see everything that it did. You can also diff, so if you're like on a branch and you want to see all the changes made throughout that branch or throughout that session, you could switch over to main, and that would diff against the current branch. Of course, there's only one change, and we're still on the main line, so that's not going to do a lot. But you can see it's doing that right there. Useful for stacked PRs too, if you want to diff against a specific GitHub branch. And I'm going to minimize this and actually ask the agent a couple questions. So first off, I don't love how detailed this comment is. So I'm just going to edit it in line. This is a nice little convenience feature where you can just edit diffs. Just like VS Code. Nicer than the Codex desktop app too, if you ever tried it. But you can just go ahead and do that. And we have muted. That looks pretty all right. And I might ask a question about rendered stateful widget or something like that. Or I might ask it to refactor this. So if you want to give feedback to Claude Code, you can do that. So if I hit add comment, I could say change this to dimmed or something like that. This is something that I could just edit myself. But for the sake of a demo, I wanted to show you there's a little gutter option whenever you hover over a line to leave a comment for an agent to work on. And it'll work with whatever agent you're using. So if you're using Claude Code and you want to send it over, just hit send to agent like that, and then send it. And that'll plop whatever context is needed for the agent to work on the task. And it works with any harness. So if you're using something else other than Claude Code tomorrow, if you're using the Warp agent too, it'll just send the comments over in the same way. So it's very flexible. It's really just meant to help you with the workflows you're already doing. This is something that I really wish VS Code had, honestly, where you can interact with CLI agents as kind of a first-class member of your workflow. And now we see it change it to dimmed. Lovely. So if we wanted to test it, I can hit Command-Shift-Enter again. Remember, this guy was peeking on the side. So I'm going to open up this app again to see what it's doing. I need to rebuild. And now we see, yeah, look at that. So we have dimmed text. That looks pretty good. And it updates the scroll position. I love that. Another thing I might do is tell the agent about this guy right here, where it's not really using the dimmed color for the highlight. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it as context inside here. And image pasting works pretty well. We also do have like a file picker. So if you want to explicitly attach a PDF or something, this is a convenient way to just open the picker and use it. So you don't have to just rely on drag to paste. Update the select. What am I doing? I have voice. Update the selected state for the sidebar items to use dimmed as well. Yeah. And I'll also go ahead and commit the work that it did, because why not? So I'm going to hit commit on this, and it will generate a commit message for us. How about that? So now it is committed, and because it knows there aren't any uncommitted changes, you can just push it to remote straight away. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to break the... Well, actually, yeah, let's just push it just to show you. So this will take the included commit, so it'll show you everything that's going on, and push it up, boom. And now we have our next commit, which is saying let's use dimmed instead. And maybe we want to commit this guy as well. I can hit commit, it will generate the message, update selected issue style to use dimmed color modifier. That seems right. You can commit and push in one step. There we go, boom, up. Super nice, super nice. So you get like generated commit messages, straight to push. You can also view your pull request status if you have a pull request open. All that stuff is just here. So again, all the convenience features that you probably want without having to leave your terminal. So if anyone's like, oh, I have to be in VS Code, I understand for Jupyter notebooks, but for coding tasks, I don't really open VS Code anymore because we've kind of pulled all this stuff right alongside the agents that you're using, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's really it that I need to show you on the coding agent side. I hope that's helpful, just for like the Claude Code interaction piece of this. So if you're using Claude Code, you've got in-app notifications. So if you're hopping around a bunch of agents working on tasks, you can see what they're doing. You have a little agent inbox at the top. You can also see which ones are still needing your attention. So this one from earlier, I still need to go check on it. It looks like it updated everything to Codex. Love that. I may actually ask it to change it back to Claude. This is the worst use of tokens possible, I'm aware. But just for the sake of demo, look at that. How fast? How fast? And we can see the credit breakdown for that guy when we did some in-terminal help. This cost us probably 2 pennies, by the way. If you're curious, what does that translate to? About 2 pennies. So don't worry. Okay. And now we have another work tree if we want to work on a second feature. So how about that? Maybe we want to do that. EPAM has a product name Codemy, which is a wrapper around Claude, Codex, OpenCode, etc. When I open a coding agent with it, the remote control button doesn't show up. Okay, that's interesting to know. So he's talking about the remote control option. Let me actually add it back to my sidebar so that y'all can see what this is. CLI agent tool belt. It's this button right here, remote control. And clicking on this will let you beam up your current session for other people to look at. So first I'll show you what it is, and then I'll share why that might be happening and how we can probably improve it. So if you hit remote control, this will create a web link to go look at what the agent's doing inside of any session, including your phone. So if I wanted to hop over to my browser here for sake of demo, and once you log in, you'll be able to just access that session straight off of your computer. So your computer is kind of becoming a server inside of this guy, which is very cool. And I'm not going to log in on this. I'm not going to log in live on stream. But let me see if I can hop into a browser that is authenticated. 1 second. Perhaps not. Yeah, I'm logged into the wrong accounts across all these things. Let's go ahead and try that one more time. Here we go. I think I got it. There we go. So this is what it looks like when you are working with an agent that is beamed from your computer. So if I hop over to Warp, we can see here's the instance in our local terminal, and here is the instance in the web version. And it's mobile optimized too, so if we like squish it down, it will reflow on the other device because just limitations. But if you're viewing it on your phone, it's actually very usable. And it will type remotely, like an SSH session. So if I wanted to ask it something about this, I could say, what else do we want to do? I want to use... Does voice mode work here? I actually haven't tried it. I don't think so. Never tried that. I want to use not dimmed the system color for the bottom keyboard shortcut callouts. There we go. And that will just send it over to the other device as it's working on stuff, which is pretty neat. So now it's making those changes on my device. And when I get home, I can go ahead and look at what the agent did. It's also shareable to other people. So if you have multiple people inside of your workspace, you can have multiple people in the same session looking at a task. So if you want to send it to a coworker, you can. Can we use remote control for terminal sessions also? It's a good question, and that kind of feeds into what Newman? Is it Newman? Tell me how to pronounce it. But we currently limit it to like streaming out coding agent workflows. I don't know, actually, if you can do standard terminal sessions. My thinking is no. Yeah. I don't know enough about this feature to say if there's like a technical reason it's hard or if it's something that we haven't implemented yet. If it's the latter, it is something that's probably open for community contribution or something that could be possible. Right now, it's limited to the CLI agents that we recognize and sending those up to a remote session. I'm personally thinking that we could implement this for like generic terminal sessions. I don't know why technically we wouldn't be able to do that, because the primitive is sending up whatever you're currently working on into a remote session. So I think it's worth filing an issue for this, actually. I'll go ahead and do that. No guarantees that we'll work on this near term. It may actually be very complicated. But I do think it would make sense so that A, if you're using custom CLIs, it still works inside the remote session. And B, if you're just running a terminal task, it would also work. So let me go ahead and just leave that bit of feedback, right? So I'll jump into an agent conversation for this warp terminal, and I'll say something like, I'm curious if we could implement remote control for generic terminal sessions. This would unlock CLIs that go beyond our existing coding agent CLI setups and also unlock live shell sessions. Can you investigate the complexity of this task potentially? Let's go ahead and understand, right? And I might even kick up our reasoning level to be a little bit higher. Let's go ahead and use hi. I'm just asking about that. Because I don't know. Let's ask. And by the end, maybe we'll create a GitHub issue for this. Let's see. Let's see, man. I do not know. Yeah, well, we only got a few minutes left here. I'm kind of letting y'all drive the Q&A, but are there any other questions that y'all have for me that I can answer about this terminal? Anything else that I can share? I didn't get to talk about cloud and cloud sandboxing. That might be interesting. But I tried to purposely focus on like local agents and Claude, since it seems like that's what y'all are using. Oh, look at that. I get to demo this for you. Amazing. So if you're using the Warp agent, we also do have smart delegation built into this guy. So if you want to have an agent fan out and spawn sub-agents, it'll just kind of do that for you. And you can even choose whether you want to put them in their own isolated cloud sandboxes. This is going far beyond what we've discussed here. But Warp does have a primitive to help you deploy agents inside of a Docker container that's hosted instead of running on your device. This can be useful if you're running a bunch of sub-agents that use a lot of compute, or if you need those sub-agents to have like computer use to click around, where doing it locally would be inconvenient. But we'll recommend to you which one to use. Here it's saying just use local agents for this, don't use cloud sandboxes, but just showing you like, hey, we help you with cloud sandboxing too if you need that kind of isolation. And it's also suggesting using Warp. You can actually fan these out to Claude Code tasks too. So let me go ahead and try that actually. Oh, I don't have a key set up. Never mind. Well, you can bring your own Anthropic key and connect them to Claude Code instances if you want. But we can also choose like different reasoning levels for these models too, or just use the accepted ones. There we go. So little surprise demo, getting to show y'all agent orchestration. It's also built in if you happen to use the Warp agent. And if you bring an Anthropic key, you can delegate to Anthropic models too. Kind of fun. And you get these tabs to look at what each agent is working on. This should create independent work trees for each of these so that they can go investigate on their own. Kind of fun. But let's see what that comes back with. In the meantime, any questions? Let me know. Also goes for the event organizers if you want to unmic and ask me any questions too. You certainly can. I'm going to find out what this one does. While this is running, it would be nice if there was JSON formatting. It would be nice if there was JSON formatting. I agree with that. So we do have a JSON file viewer. We do not have format on save for this sort of stuff. I do think for simple file types, that would be fine. I think in stuff like JavaScript and TypeScript, we got to be very careful about what auto formatting would do. Like, what limit do you think we should set there? Do you think it should be like, there should be auto formatting for like data formats, like YAML and JSON? Or should it also be for programming languages? Because I think for like data formats, like JSON, we could just have an opinionated formatter. But if your workspace has a formatter, we should probably support it too. Really depends. I think it would need sort of like an LSP extension system like VS Code to really make that happen. That would be my guess. It would be nice to have. Command plugin events, create CLI agent status. This is a bit like watching paint dry, I'm aware. Normally I tab away from an agent while it works, but we'll just look at it live and see what they're working on. So this is actually having one look into, how did it divide this up? So we have one that's looking into session sharing, and one that's looking into CLI agent control to see how it ties into that. Interesting. That makes some sense. I've got enough to form an answer, but I'll wait for the other guys. That's kind of funny. So of course here, this is going to be a lot more expensive, I'm not going to lie. If you've ever used orchestration, yeah, it does rack up credits a lot more quickly. And we're using a higher reasoning level, so I'm not surprised by this. Doesn't have to be auto formatting, but if we could just right click somewhere in the file and click formatting, that would be enough. Nice. Yeah, I guess my question there is like, because people have their own JSON formatters, but you're right, if it is an opt-in where you just click on the button, we could just have a built-in formatter that might ignore your custom, like if you have a toolchain that formats JSON in a different way, our formatter may not follow that, because it requires extra detection on our part. But we could have just a unopinionated formatter That's like, we'll just format JSON with 2 spaces as the line breaks, and that's our opinion. And you can just do that. And then a follow along would be like, if you have a custom JSON formatter, we also delegate to that. That feels like a 1-2 punch that makes some sense. So we're fleshing out a feature in real time here. I love that. So if I was like opening a JSON file, let me see where that might be. So we're looking at grid, for example. Like if we wanted to format this, maybe we don't do format on save. Maybe there's just like, click on this button, and there's a format option. And we could have a keyboard shortcut too. That's like, format this file. That makes sense? That seemed useful? I think that would be the most intuitive thing. I think that would make some sense. Let's ask an agent about that. Let's have it just make an issue for this. Make an issue on GitHub for a feature request following our issue template to add a formatting option for data files. I would think we can start with less opinionated formats like JSON, TOML, or YAML, and have a baked-in formatter for each. It shouldn't be a format on save, I don't think. It could just be an overflow menu option on the file viewer. And we could bind a shortcut to this that mirrors the shortcut used by Visual Studio Code. Out of scope would be delegating to formatters that are installed in your current project. Some people will need this, but I think it can be sliced off separately to reduce complexity of an MVP. Let's see. I'm not guaranteeing this is exactly how it will work. I'm just thinking off the cuff, this is probably a useful GitHub issue that we could file for this sort of thing. We're also waiting on these sub-agents. Again, the danger of using sub-agents is it will take longer and it will use more tokens. It's kind of funny here that it decided, I actually have enough to answer this. I don't know why I filed those sub-agents, but I'll wait for them. Agents are funny. Okay. And now we're doing a little enhancement over here. I'll also check the warp docs and also check for duplicate issues. That's lovely. Thank you for that. We're filing a lot of issues today. Okay, so we've created another issue. Let's see how detailed that one is. Add built-in formatting for data files in the file viewer. I think this one makes a lot of sense. Support less opinionated formats, baked-in formatters. Shift-Alt-F on Windows, Shift-Option-F on Mac OS. Thanks for looking up Visual Studio Code's shortcut. I couldn't remember what it was. But there we go. Now we have a little issue over here to track this. I think this would be pretty doable, honestly. Newmon, also, I invite you, I hope I'm saying your name right, if you want to actually use Claude Code to go implement an MVP for this, I'm happy to review it and check it out. Just a little invitation to contribute to our open source repo if you want to. I'll also check with Kevin on our LSP team to see if this makes sense. I'm specifically curious if we want to have like an opinionated formatter and if that's okay for an MVP. It may not be, depends, but I'll check with the team to see if this is reasonable and how I've scoped it out here. Okay. Well, I think we're overtime. We're actually overtime. Never mind. Well, we got a lot done. I think that's cool. Okay, in PyCharm, if you right-click on a file, there's an external tools option where you can write your own custom CLI commands. Just like, oh, that makes sense. Last month, I wrote a basic Python JSON formatter script. Then when I click that option, it formats the JSON file. You can also assign it to a key map. All that makes sense. Cool. Here's the thing. I'll actually invite you. Go ahead and leave that comment on the GitHub issue, if you don't mind. I think that would color it in a little bit. That makes sense to me. Bind it to a CLI command rather than an editor extension. That would be more true to what Warp is capable of. Yeah, if you don't mind leaving that comment on the GitHub issue just above here in the Zoom call, that'd be awesome. And we have an answer on remote control. It's likely feasible. Transport mostly exists. Complexities, product state hardening. Interesting. It's already generic-ish. Well, that's good. Low to medium. Expose remote control for any warp terminal using existing command execution long-running PTY writes, mostly entry point and telemetry and tests. So it would take time. Arbitrary CLI support with agent-like polish. Okay. Add generic remote control entry point in panes, headers, context menu / command for any Bootstrap terminal. Use the existing I'm curious if we already have this as well. I'm just gonna check, and then I'll probably let y'all go here. But let me find out. Oh, we don't have an overflow menu for agent tasks. Share session. Oh yeah, there's a way. Share without scroll task. Share from start of session. Yeah, there's a way to share. Okay. Yeah, there's a way to start a live session already. That's what I was thinking. So if you were wondering, how can I share session? We don't have like a dedicated remote control button, but we do have a generic option to share whatever session you currently have going. So it's this share button here. For some reason, it doesn't show right away if I create a new terminal pane, which is kind of annoying. And I know why it's doing that too. It's because we don't have a top bar unless you have multiple panels. So to me, that's the real gap, is it's not visible to y'all. You weren't aware of it. But I can tell you, like, if you create a pane, it now appears. Share session. There it is. So if you want to share a session that's running anything, you can do that. And it will include whatever command that you happen to be running. So if you're wondering about remote control for custom CLIs, that's kind of the way to do it. Just hit share, and then it should all start streaming. So there's your answer. It exists. We just need to work on some UX problems, I think. But yeah, I hope this was helpful to y'all. I'm just going to stop sharing here. If you want to hop in our issue logs, please do. It's open source. We came up with a few issues today on stream, actually, that I think would make Warp a little bit better. So hop in the issue logs, work on some stuff, and try Warp. Try it out. See if it replaces some stuff in your existing workflows. With that, I'll just go ahead and let y'all go. But thanks for hopping by. Really appreciate it.